It's growing season. Forget summer. Around this time of year, fall time, I've said this before, when the sun is lower in the sky, shorter days I don't like, but more sun or more light in my home, I love that. And not just me, my Hoya have been loving the extra light that's coming into my space. They've been growing like crazy. So I've decided instead of doing just my usual monthly favorites video, I thought why not do my monthly favorites video, but a Hoya edition. I'm just going to be talking about just Hoya in this video. Recently, I also did a poll and quite a few of you selected plant tours and Hoya content. So for the Hoya lovers, this is for you. I will just give you a quick rundown as to how my videos typically go. My favorites, I like to talk about my comeback, the plant that struggled but is doing a lot better. My show off, a plant that, you know, is sporting a lot of really nice variegation. I like talking about my fastest grower, so one that has been pushing out a lot of new growth, and my MVP, my most valuable plant, one that I just couldn't keep my eyes off of. I recently did a houseplant walkthrough, so you've seen a lot of my houseplants recently. If you'd like to see a more extensive look at my Hoya and some of my other houseplants, you could check out that recent video. But in this one, I'm just going to be highlighting just a few that I feel like fall into these 4 categories. So number 1, oh my goodness, let's talk about my comeback. This month's Hoya comeback is my, oh, I have to look at the name, Hoya Carnosa Nova Ghost. That's this plant. This plant did not get the most love from me when I first got it because I felt like it was very difficult to get it to root. I got it as a cutting with no roots, and it took forever to root and start pushing out new growth. But finally, it's starting to do something. I had it under my grow lights. I've had it in a prop box. It's finally rooted. It's living in Molly's aeroid potting mix, I believe. And it's sort of in my little DIY self-watering setup. This plant, I've tried it, like I mentioned, in a lot of different settings, and I noticed its favorite is my south facing window. I've had it under grow lights. I've had it in this room, which is a west facing room. And I've noticed that it likes that bright, indirect light. And recently, about maybe a month ago, I put it in my south facing window, and it finally started pushing out these beautifully long tendrils here. I'm getting it caught in this guy. This is my Australis Lisa. I'm gonna have to push you to the side. Yeah, so it finally is starting to grow some really long tendrils. It's been loving that window. It's been pushing out some new leaves. It has these minty leaves. It almost has a reversed variegation where the leaves are minty and it has those freckles, just ever so slight freckles or splashes of green on it. And it's a stunner. It's a really good looking plant, and I'm glad that it's finally doing something for me. The leaves sometimes can look a bit wavy, almost, I can't explain it, but some of the leaves come out a little bit wavy. I'm not sure what causes that. I'm not sure if that's just a characteristic of some of the leaves sometimes. But some of them are a bit wavy, like this one here, and some of them can have this more of your usual Hoya leaf shape or leaf shape, which is, you know, a bit broader for the bigger leafed Hoya and sort of more flat. But I like it, and it's a little bit pubescent on the top, just ever so slightly pubescent, not as pubescent as some of the others, but it has a little bit of a soft texture to it. Anyways, this is my comeback because for a very long time, this plant did absolutely nothing. And when I finally was like, you know what, that's enough, I'm going to put it directly in my south facing window, it started pushing out these tendrils and started reaching for the pole. It's grabbing onto everything, trying and find something to hold on to. And so if you have this plant, I would say very, very bright light for this. It actually gets a couple hours of direct sunlight. And because of that, It's been trying to sun stress, and I say trying. I'm not even sure if you'll be able to see just a tiny bit of purple, just a tiny bit of purple inside of this leaf right here, just the tiniest bit. You probably are not even able to see it. It's like a very cloudy day. It's fall, so we're getting that cloudy, rainy fall weather. Even if it doesn't rain, it's just very cloudy. So I'm doing the best, but it really loves that bright light. And I've had a few questions about my growing conditions for my Hoya. So this one is in like I said, Molly's aeroid mix, and I don't have enough self-watering pots, so I put it in here, and in this sort of just a regular white little pot that I got from the dollar store, and I got plastic cups, and I put it underneath, and I add my fertilized water in it. Now this plant doesn't mind it. This is a risk. But the reason I did this is because I find thinner leafed Hoya, although this is not as thin leafed, it's sort of in the middle, sort of not as thick as some of the other Hoyas, as some of the others I'll talk about, but it's not as thin as maybe the Hushkiliana, or not as thin as maybe the Hoya Coriaceae silver. Not that thin, but I do find this to be a very thirsty Hoya, and it dries out very quickly. This reservoir will go all the way down, obviously not all the way to nothing, but it will go all the way down to the bottom of the pot very quickly. Sometimes it takes less than a week for this to dry out completely. So I would definitely say this is a thirsty Hoya, and I would say also that the growth is directly linked to how much water is in the reservoir and how quickly I'm able to get to it. Hoya have very succulent leaves, and they're able to retain a lot of moisture in their leaves, and they don't urgently and desperately need to be watered. Some of them are a little bit more forgiving, but some of them I've also noticed, oh no, just realized that my mic died. So I apologize if the sound isn't the best, if it's not up to the quality that I usually have it. I apologize, but it died and I didn't realize, and it's too late to charge it now. So we're just gonna have to use my regular audio. But anyways, I was saying that, yeah, so it's quite thirsty, and it's gone ahead and pushed roots into the reservoir. But even if the roots are there and it's in the reservoir, I noticed it only will resume growing when the water is all the way up to the side of the cup. This is risky. This is risky business. And if you don't have very bright light to give your plant, I wouldn't suggest this. I wouldn't recommend it. But this is honestly my setup and what I have and what works for me and my care style and my growing conditions. But if I had more self-watering pots, I would just put it in a self-watering pot. It would be less risky because the roots most likely will not be sitting in water. But these roots don't seem to mind. As you can see, like I've showed, it's happily pushed some roots down into water, and they're doing well in here. So it's risky. Give it a try if you want to, but this is what's working for me. But yeah, this is the Hoya carnosa Nova Ghost. It has definitely been my comeback. I'm very proud of it and what it's doing so far. The next Hoya I'm going to talk about is my fastest grower, and honestly, I've showed you this plant recently, but it literally is extremely fast growing, and it looks a little different from the last time I showed it to you compared to now. That is my Hoya lacunosa mint coin. This plant, I have no idea what it's doing. It has gone wild. It has literally gone wild. The last time I showed this to you, I think was in that same like walkthrough video I showed you. It already looks way fuller and way different than that video. I just cannot believe just how quickly this plant is growing. It's literally pushing out vines and tendrils in all different directions. It's growing. The leaves are starting to take on this very deformed shape. It doesn't have that, all of the leaves do not have, like, you know, the typical mint coin leaf is typically like this, but this seems to think it's some form of a silver dollar. It's starting to behave like the silver dollar. You could probably see it right here. And I'm not quite sure what we're doing here. It quickly is outgrowing this pot, this setup, this trellis. But you know what, Hoya, they don't mind being sort of, how can I put it? They don't mind being in tight quarters. So I'm not in a rush to repot or change the conditions, change the setup, change the trellis, make it bigger. My only thing is it's become quite tippy. So it's become top heavy and the weight of the leaves push the cup over. And so I don't want to have an accident where, you know, I have to sort of have it leaning up against something because I'm afraid like I walk past it too quickly and the wind from as I walk past, or my husband, he walks very hard. I'm not sure if you have someone in your family or who lives with you who just walks like they're elephants, these huge steps, and literally sometimes the floor rattles as he walks by. And I'm just afraid he will step too hard or my son would jump and then this will go falling over. But outside of that, this plant has been doing so well. It's growing so quickly. It's pushed out like this tendril. I had to like slide it on the other side to sort of hang on to these leaves. I have it in, I want to say Molly's aeroid mix, but it looks more like my own mixture. I'm trying to make a mixture that's quite similar to Molly's. Like, let's be real, Molly's is just, it's amazing. But this one, it's similar, but it's definitely nowhere as refined as their mix. But I think it's in my own mix and it seems to like it quite a bit. And it's definitely growing quickly. It's got roots in the reservoir. It dries out so quickly. And so setups like this is what gave me confidence that I can, like the Hoya you just saw, that I can push the reservoir to be a little bit inside of my mixture. Like I mentioned, it's risky. I aim for it to be just below the roots initially. And as the plant starts to grow and I realize it's starting to push through that mixture, I allow the water to touch the roots. But again, it's very risky and that's just what I do. I just like to share it. Maybe it might help someone else. But anyways, this plant is doing so well. I've talked about it a few times. Very hard to root, in my opinion. Hard to get started because of, you know, this very fine, very delicate vine. It's hard to get it started, in my opinion. But oh my goodness, it has just blossomed. I think all of these plants, no, not all of them, but this one lives in my south-facing window as well. And it's doing beautifully. I did not think this plant would have come this far, but here we are. And that's my Hoya lacunosa mint coin. How's the video going so far? Like what you see? If you do, let me know by hitting the thumbs up button down below and consider subscribing. It's free and it'll help you to easily access my videos in the future. Let's keep going. The next plant we're going to talk about is my show off. This one it actually lives right next to me on this shelf that you can see right here. This sits right in a west facing window, and that is my Hoya latifolia Sarawak cream. I think it's cream. I'm just throwing words together, but yeah, this is my show off. It's my show off of the month because look at the size of this leaf. Look at the size. So it is officially bigger than my hand. And this is the reason that I got this Hoya. It is also called the dinner plate Hoya because the leaves can just get so big, it makes you think of a dinner plate. And it is massive. It is by far the biggest Hoya leaf that I have. And that's why I got it, because I want these big leaves. It's in a self-watering pot, and I believe this is Molly's aeroid mix. And I really wanted to wash this out and get this pretty looking for you. But honestly, the con of this self-watering pot that I'll share with you if you're considering getting them is that the top and the bottom are not connected by magnets or anything like that. So it's literally friction. To try to separate this is so difficult. And I have the fear that I'm going to sort of pull it apart so aggressively that the top of the plant, this part will just go flying somewhere. So I need an extra pair of hands to sort of hold the tops safely while I gently try to remove the bottom. Separating the two on your own is very difficult. So I apologize that this is a bit grimy, but that's my situation currently. But anyways, I wanted to mention that this is my show off for the month because of these huge leaves. It's starting to push its roots into the reservoir. You could just ever so slightly see that. And it's starting to push out this tendril, this vine. It's starting to, you know, slowly make its way up. I like to guide it and sort of work it around the trellis a little bit. And yeah, it's doing well. It's a very easygoing plant, very satisfying. Not the fastest grower because, as you can see, it spends a lot of time hardening off the leaves. So this is huge, but it's still quite soft. So I don't even think this is fully finished growing. I don't even think it's fully hardened off yet. But it started to push out some other new leaves. This is a bit, nope, it's fine. It just through I could see through it because of the light, but it's fine. And so this one here, and it's got a new leaf growing in here, and it has a new growth point down here that it has activated. So this is a new leaf that is growing right here, and this other growth point. So all of this is just one plant, and it's pushed out this other growth point, and it has a new leaf coming in here as well. So it's doing really well. I love this plant. I'm very excited that I have it. A little worried because, as you can see, the leaves get really big and it roots quite a bit. So I'm worried that it will soon outgrow my space. But I love it. And if you like large leafed plants like I do, I think this is sort of the best of both of them because it's a Hoya. It's a Hoya, and you can have some of these smaller leaves, but you can also get one of the big leaves. And I think I would love to have this plant. You know, the Snow Queen. So if you look at this one, it has just a little bit of splashing on there. The Snow Queen has actual variegation, so more of it is covered in that splashing. And I have technically it's a Snow Queen, but it's a cutting from a Snow Queen, the reverted side of it. So some reverted leaves. So there's still a chance that that variegation could come through again, that splashing. But I'm not holding my breath. But anyways, I just hope maybe it activates. But anyways, that's this guy. That is my show off, my Hoya latifolia Sarawak cream, I believe, or the dinner plate Hoya. And before I get to my MVP, I have another honorable mention, another show off that's a bit of an honorable mention, and that's this one. This is my variegated, oh, I don't even remember the name of this, but I think it's either my variegated lacunosa or I have to look up the name again, but I have it in one of my older videos. But anyways, I got this at the Ontario Plant Show. This one, I was so scared I would lose it because it's so rare, and at least where I am, and it's so variegated, but I'm so glad that it's finally taking off. I have it growing in pond in a self-watering pot. It dries out, I would say not very quickly, but not very slowly. It dries out faster than I would expect it to, considering that this is such a slow growing Hoya. Does that make sense? Usually when it dries out faster, the plant is growing a little faster, but it dries out pretty quickly. But anyways, it is a little cutie pie. I love the variegation. I love that it's taken the initiative in the one vine, in the one plant, to push out these other growth points. It has one here, and then it has a baby one down below. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that, but I'm glad that it has decided to do that, and I'm very proud of it. Still hanging on to the variegation nicely, and it is adorable, and I look forward to when it fills this out, and hopefully it becomes a little bit like my lacunosa mint coin, where it sort of starts to fill it out a bit, but that will take a long time because this is quite slow growing. But that's it. There's not much to report, but I've been enjoying staring at this plant every day or every other day or so in the past month, so I just wanted to share it and just share it with you. Okay, so the final plant that I would like to talk about is my MVP, because it's my MVP because I didn't think that it was going to make it. I wasn't entirely sure that this plant was going to make it, and this is my Hoya carnosa Crimson Princess. I love the Crimson Princess. It's adorable, but I do find it's a little bit tricky for a carnosa. Carnosas have the reputation of being easy and fast growing, but the Crimson Princess and I, you know, we've had a little bit of back and forth. We've been not struggling is a strong word, but we've been sort of trying to figure each other out. Anyways, the original one that I got, the original plant, which is this and maybe one other plant in there, I lost maybe half of it. So recently, I think it was earlier this month, I went to Home Depot and I bought a second plant and I potted them both together. I was worrying and questioning as to whether it would survive because it's so delicate, it doesn't like to be messed with a little bit. And so I went potting the two together. I tried not to interfere with the original plant. I tried just to make room for the second one. And I was worried that I would probably lose one or both of them, but it is doing very well. It's continued its growth. It hasn't, you know, skipped a beat since then. Maybe I lost, maybe just one little baby leaf since then that's dried off, but it started to push out this new growth that you can see here. So it is doing well and it's continuing to grow, pushing out some new growth. I do have it in directly in a south facing window. I gave it like the brightest condition that I have, stuck on that window in sort of a hanging planter, and it is getting the brightest light that I can offer it, and it's doing well. And that's the thing, that's what I've learned. When you have plants, you've made changes, you're repotting, you've done something drastic, give them bright amounts of light, give them a lot of light, and you will give them the best chance of survival. And yeah, although that is what I did with the first one, but it didn't work. So I'm not saying it's a promise, but at least your chances are higher. And yeah, that's it. I have it in this self-watering pot. It does dry out, you know, relatively quickly, and so that tells me that it's doing well, it's growing. But this is a plant, unlike the other Hoya that I showed you, where I will not put the reservoir higher. I will not let that substrate be wet. And honestly, I remember when I first started with Hoya, that was a question that I had, because I would see how other people would have the water in the reservoirs, and I always used to wonder, how do you know how high to have the water in the reservoir? And I learned it through trial and error. I learned with some Hoya, like, oh, that's way too high. And then with some Hoya, I'm like, whoa, that's way too low. And so it depends a lot on how much light you're giving it, how water retentive your medium is, and on the plant itself. Some of them I noticed they don't like to feel that wet sogginess, and they won't do well. This is one of them. This one will rot very easily. The others are a bit more resilient and a little bit more thirsty. So you sort of have to test your plant, test your skills, test with your conditions, because honestly, I wondered if I wanted to be the type of plant person that would come here and say, you need to do this, this, and this. But I think what I'm going to encourage most of all is to help you to use your intuition. Try to focus on your plant itself. Focus on your care that you can give, your conditions. Try that. Try different things. And you know what? If it doesn't work out and you lost one, do like me, or do like a lot of us, just get another one. Just try again, or propagate your original plant so that if you lose it, you have something else you can work with and start over with. But plants may surprise you. They're resilient, and they're fun. Just have fun with it, and don't let the hobby stress you out. That's what I learned from this plant. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching this. It probably wasn't a very long one, but I hope you enjoyed it. These are some of my favorite Hoya that I've enjoyed for this month. And I'm curious to know, tell me, which Hoya have you been enjoying this month? Which ones have been growing well for you? A lot of my Hoya have been doing really well. What's funny is that some of my plants that I thought, oh my goodness, like, yes, we're doing great, they're the ones that's struggling, and the ones that I thought, oh my goodness, I'm gonna lose this plant, they're the ones that thriving. So it's just so funny how things are changing, but for the most part, my Hoya are doing amazingly right now. And I'm tempted to do another Hoya tour, another collection tour with Hoya, but I just did one, I think maybe 4 or 5 months ago. Still, I've gotten so many more since then, but I don't want to be redundant, right? So I think I'm going to wait a little while longer. But thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time here, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.